Morning, ladies and gentlemen. I am Kanchi Shah, and it gives me immense pleasure in welcoming you all to the third episode of the Digital Dialogues 2.0, sponsored by Dell Technologies in Wellington, presented by Strategy. Ladies and gentlemen, in a perfect world, an organization's system would run without problems 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. But we don't live in a perfect world. Things happen. And when they do, your organization's ability to carry on in the face of adversity will depend on the resiliency of its system. Being a cyber resilient organization means being able to fight through adversity and continue to operate, even if it's in a scaled down mode. Cyber resilience focuses on what happens when cybersecurity measures fail, as well as when systems are disrupted by things such as human error, unforeseen outages, weather, or any other disruption. Resiliency involves putting measures in place to minimize the impact of these disruptions. As companies digitize businesses and automate operations, cyber risks proliferate. Organizations are mandated to devise new ways of protecting the organization and building a secure digital agenda. Ladies and gentlemen, that's exactly what we're going to address through today's episode. We appreciate you taking your time off your busy schedules to join us today and request you to please address your questions to our speakers using the Q&A option on your screen. With that, we'd like to kick off today's session with the first segment, which is the CXO Dialogues, a conversation on how organizations should approach technology and the incremental business outcomes that will be measured on its adoption. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Rajiv Sharaf, Head IT for Torrent Power, and Mr. Amit Dhawan, CISO and DPO, Quantify. They are in a conversation moderated by Mr. Arjun Vishwanathan, Chief Knowledge Officer, Strategy. Over to you, Arjun.
Hello and welcome. My name is Arjun Vishwanathan. I'm going to be your host today at the Digital Dialogues 2.0, which talks about business resilience and reimagination of security. Because being a cyber resilient organization increasingly means being able to fight through adversity and yet continue to operate, even if it's in a scaled down mode. Uh, with our panelists today, who are very, very eminent, we're going to be talking about how cyber resilience focuses on what happens when cybersecurity measures fail, as well as when systems are disrupted by such things as human error, unforeseen outages, or any other disruption. And to have this, what promises to be an interesting conversation, please put your hands together to welcome Rajiv Sharaf, Head IT at Torrent Power. Rajiv welcome. Delighted you could join us.
Thank you, Arjun. My pleasure.
Thank you. And I'd love to welcome back Amit Dhawan, who's the Chief Information Security and Chief Data Protection Officer. Amit, welcome. Delighted and privileged. Sir.
Hey, good day. Hi, good day, everybody. Thank you, Arjun. Always a pleasure.
Um, Amit, I'm going to directly start with you, and then I'm going to take this to Rajiv also. We've been talking about cybersecurity for quite a few years now, but the concepts of cyber resilience seem to have taken precedence only over the last, let's say, 2 odd years. My question to you really is, how do you delineate cybersecurity with the larger cyber resilience paradigm that organizations are striving to create?
So, there's an interesting thought. Cyber resiliency or a process to start the business after something goes wrong was always part of some kind of strategy, maybe business continuity or disaster recovery. But most of these things were, just left over to the databases and the applications and something like this. And from a people standpoint, it was percentage of people working on a project and the critical resources and all those things. But what happened in the last 2 years, the pandemic, which was always part of a BCP plan, but in some hidden form in a corner. So that brought all economic activities to a halt. There were restrictions all around. And all the BCP plans went out of whack. That percentage of people working in some location, because all the locations globally were impacted at the same time. So the resilience got tested at that point in time, wherein could people or could organizations continue their business despite the pandemic? So the seriousness came from there. Okay. And there was a requirement. Otherwise, the businesses were going out of business, if I can say that. Okay. So that important came at that point in time. And organizations had to evolve so that they could continue with the business. So high level cyber resiliency strategy, which includes security standards, guidelines, people, processes, everything got tested, got evolved. People created ingenious ideas to move home and start working. So that is where the pandemic got a major change in how the cyber resiliency was looked at. And the pandemic also brought distributed working and increased ransomware. So, two aspects to resiliency. One was people availability, and systems were anyway available. Only thing was some configurations, and they will would have become available from home as well. But then the effort to protect against the intended disruptions, the ransomware and all those things. So all those things got tested. Yes, they were related, correlated with each other. And yes, your plans, your tools, etc. got teams got tested and they worked out of. I answered you.
Well, that actually is very interesting because Rajiv, I'm going to come bring that to you. Uh, in the evolution of organizations, and as organizations digitize businesses, automate operations, the risk of cyber attacks increase significantly. And therefore, we are in an ecosystem where organizations are mandated to devise constantly and perpetually new ways of protecting the organization and building a secure digital agenda. In your view, what are the opportunities that present themselves there, yet the challenges that must be addressed?
See, Amit rightly pointed out that resiliency and continuity were already there, concepts were there, and it was more on the traditional way where we used to say we will have DC and we will have a TR and we will ensure that it is a seismic zone. And once in a year, we'll have DCDR drill and put the result, compliance result as a part of the audit and then say we are resilient. But with evolution of the technology and need of the connectivity, need of the business, need of the IT systems available, the concept has slowly changed. Earlier, we used to talk RPO, like recovery point objective, which we used to talk, say, 2 hours, 4 hours, or some minutes, and then recovery time object. These were the two important parameters which were defining the resiliency. Now, people are talking of RPO of zero, means even if you are down today, you should be in position to start without user knowing that there was a downtime. So that is what is known as resiliency. And the technology like cloud, the auto changeover, the various architecture, everything is helping us, every organization, to ensure that you can move toward zero resiliency. What is happening at the background, the user doesn't know, business continue as usual. So that's how it is coming up. And with this, there are challenges which are coming up. If you are trying to adopt this technology, when you are trying to look at the zero resiliency, then if there is a ransomware attack and if you are not detecting in the time, then whatever you are ready for the zero resiliency, that will also get impacted with the ransomware. So once again, you are flat, means you are nowhere. And then the technology which are given by some of the solution where they say, okay, when I'm going to take backup, I try to compare my current image with previous image and then try to see if there's a rapid growth of the data, and then try to see, yes, there seems to be some sort of impact into the system, and then try to take corrective action. So, technology, then artificial intelligence, which is coming along with this, all these things are driving the adoption of the better resiliency, and businesses are also striving for this, and they are saying no downtime now. Earlier, we used to talk of near zero downtime. People are taking no downtime. So that's how the things are coming up.
No, that's actually very interesting because you spoke about the whole concept of ransomware becoming more sophisticated. Now, I'm going to bring that to you. At the end of it, when you boil it all down, you realize that what you are protecting is the vast amounts of data, insights, and intelligence that is existential IP for an organization is what we are protecting at the end of the day. And especially with the sophistication from both state sponsored as well as independent actors. My question to you is crafting a durable security architecture with best in class data integrity, is that even a reality in this in an ever evolving security ecosystem and paradigm of sorts?
It is not a reality, to be very, very honest. Uh, my opinion, the business requirements are evolving and changing. Now, these business requirements are changing the technology as well that is required. You look at the Facebooks or even the cloud technologies that we are looking at, as Rajiv mentioned, you have resiliency in milliseconds. Uh, so security has been a follower of technology. It has not been the leader of technology. So that fight always continues between the technology and the security folks. If the technology will come and then people will look at security. And the tools are always little delayed from what the technology brings us. The cloud came, what, 15, 17 years back? When did the security of cloud evolve? Just about 5 years back. And it was in a very, very sorry state. And now in the last 3 years, we have seen proactive maturity on cloud, proactive security, and all those things. So what you spoke about is a myth. It does not exist. But the good part
Yet,
is
but yet the expectations exist.
expectations exist. So what you can do is, so there are two things that help us. One, even the thieves take a little time to imbibe that technology. Okay, or the hackers also take a little more time because it is new to them. So first you need to be a hacker. If you go back to the basics of the definition part of it, a hacker is somebody who's an expert on that and can manipulate it to your way of working, like doing a wheelie on a two-wheeler. Okay, it is not supposed to be designed to be done. A wheelie is suppose not supposed to be, the two-wheeler is not designed for that, but a person understands the working of that technology so much that he's able to do a wheelie. So same thing happens to technology. So first the technology comes, then the hackers come, and then the safeguards come. Okay, so it always follows like that. While in the meanwhile, to protect your data, you go back to first principles and you say, okay, what is happening in the technology? How is it impacting my affecting in a positive way? How is it affecting my business? And then you say what I can do to protect it. Okay, so there is always a lag, which is in the official terms of security is an acceptance of risk. uh, okay, which is a bad term, but then that is the lingo that is used, that there is no other choice, so you accept it.
Rajiv, if I could bring the same question to you, what are your perspectives on
Uh, See, my perspective, I agree with Amit, but the point is, uh, we as a CIOs are required to evaluate each and every risk, and then try to see how do we mitigate it, what are our plans to mitigate it, and what is the cost of mitigation. If the cost, see, everything we can always say, okay, I will have X tool or Y tool or this technology, but then the real testing happens when the incident occurs, and investment with the risk becomes a question which need to be decided. So that is one of the important aspect. But more or less said, more important aspect of here, it is uh, whenever now the new application or new development whichever is happening, the concept of security first is being adopted, because your code, whatever you develop, you ensure that it is not vulnerable. There are new platforms which are available, low code, no code platforms which are available, so that earlier days when any application developer used to develop, it was all based on his own intelligence, and then that way used to be vulnerability. So these are getting added. So technology is helping to ensure that we have a better secured architecture, a better secured application, and then it gives us some sort of pillar or some sort of confidence that yes, there is a security. But then no organization, no technology or nothing can make 100% security. Even if you do something, there will be always some loopholes, and somewhere something will happen. So
Indeed, sir.
that always remains there. So as Amit rightly said, it cannot be 100%. It has
No,
to be
I
always,
couldn't
yeah,
agree more.
you have to compromise somewhere, and then you subscribe to some sort of cyber insurance in case something you say, boss, I have done all
Indeed.
these things. If you are not addressing, then there is some sort of cyber insurance in place.
It's actually what you're saying is very interesting because Amit, if I could bring that back to you, they say the loosely defined concept of cyber resilience is that cyber resilience focuses on what happens when cyber security measures fail. Now, increasingly, Amit, and I will come to you, Rajiv ji, cyber security and building and or crafting or evolving a journey which future proofs the enterprise from the unforeseen attacks is essentially now become a boardroom conversation. It is a boardroom metric. In
Absolutely.
that kind of a scenario, Amit, and with your experience and in your perspective, how should, and for the wonderful audience that's tuning in to us today, how should CISOs, IT leaders even approach the journey of building cyber resilience then?
Uh, not a very difficult task if you ask me. The technology that is implemented, you are looking at certain controls, and you. But before I go into this, let me go back to your question itself, which says cyber resiliency is failure of cyber security controls. I do not completely agree to that statement.
Fair.
Uh, it is it is evolution of certain circumstances where your controls either are not there or they are missing. Okay. Like I mentioned initially, pandemic was there in every organization's business continuity plan. But over the years, it was given lesser and lesser real estate. Nobody was testing for it. Okay. So, you can say that the BCP plan failed in the case of pandemic. But if you see, the control was there, but nobody thought about it. So it's a little trade-off on how do you define cyber resilience. It's an unforeseen circumstance, okay, which you had never thought of. And now coming to planning for it, see, like the standard itself spoke about that you create some percentage of efficient work, critical resources, availability, cross skilling. So norm, and this was how the standard defined the resiliency part, the business continuity. Pandemic threw the whole standard out of the window. Right? People should be there, application should be available, data should be made available, people should work. So I think we are completely redefining the resiliency part. And yes, the tools, technologies are helping out in that. This has been a huge awakening and opportunity for change of thought process on how do you look at security. And there is another aspect that came in earlier. See, we were too much on the compliance part of it. The whole thing of compliance is no longer applicable. You can be 99% secure, but that 1% which is not secure. See, dashboard says 95 and above is green. Okay, you are 99%. 1%. In larger companies, 1% means 500 computers.
Absolutely.
So one computer is what is required to be hacked to, lose your happiness completely. So uh, compliance is no longer applicable. It is the security assurance that a person can provide to the organization. And resiliency, things will not failure or unforeseen opportunities that will continue. But this has changed even the boards on the way they used to look at it. Cyber security was a function which was good to have. Compliance, it shows compliance, good to show in different board presentations and meetings. It doesn't work anymore like that. Everybody is scared, and people are working hard, and there is a due attention and due credence given to the teams for their efforts that they've done in the last 2 3 years.
I couldn't agree more on this because Rajivji, I'm going to come to you with something that is evolving equally, which is that today, with a distributed workforce, uh, the influx or the ingestion of tons of sensors, machines generating data, the ability to cyber security as a strategy today has to be equally geographically distributed in a manner of speaking. Because, well, I'm sitting somewhere, an X machine is elsewhere. No longer is it very centrally located. In that kind of a scenario, what is your guidance to future leaders, IT heads, CIOs, CISOs, data protection officers, on how they should approach the journey as this hybrid or distributed workforce, as well as the use of sensors and so many more data churning endpoints will only increase.
Yeah, so you are rightly hitting the nail. See, what was happening earlier, except the IT industry, everybody was confined within the four walls, sitting within the premise, and then, the user machine, everything was reachable, and then one used to either get it disconnected or take corrective action to ensure that all the security controls are implemented. But now, work from anywhere, any place, any device, all these concepts are reality. And in that case, if you want to implement security, it is really a pain. But then, for this, we have to have two level of things, which we suggest, we recommend. Maybe you should first have the device identity, ensure that device which is getting connected to the network is always authorized. First, get it authorized and then give access. Earlier connection, it was first get it access and then authorize. It has to get changed. And another is a user. So a user, whether he is authorized and he's the same user, then only give him. So the concept of zero trust network architecture, ZTNA and SASE, is becoming more and more famous. So that is how other blocks are getting fitted and ensure that, if there are IoT devices or sensors or mobile devices, everywhere we can try to enforce certain security controls and ensure that my organization policies are getting implemented across all the devices. So concept of like unified endpoint management (UEM), which is emerging, and earlier we used to have mobile data management and mobile application management, and now that is in the larger perspective as a universal is coming out as unified endpoint management, which takes care of all type of endpoint. Because if tomorrow sensors and your you try to use your gestures, your eyes, and all the stuff. So there are going to be various inputs, and how do you ensure that the security is taken care of there? So this is all emerging concept, and it is getting tested. And over a period, as Amit rightly said, like cloud take some time to get it maturity. So UEM will also take some time to get it matured, and then this will be slowly getting implemented, because you cannot have multiple consoles to monitor and control. You need to have a unified console to ensure that my security posture, monitoring of the security posture and control of those things. So that's how I think that will
And
happen.
speaking about emerging concepts, Amit, if I may be allowed to ask you, which is that as you look towards the future, with the learnings of the past, let's say, few years, firmly embedded in our collective thought processes, what are the opportunities that clearly present themselves for organizations that are sitting down today to craft their blueprints for cyber resilience over, let's say, the next 24 to 36 months? And what would you advise them to certainly and critically focus on?
So, two things primarily. Look at your uh, areas which are most exposed. Uh, like in IT services companies, it is more of you know uh, more of email flow, more of lesser of application flow, but more of email flow. We are not a SaaS based company. We are not selling out tools. So you protect what you feel is threatened more. So I am a firm believer that if you block those channels of incoming muck and protect your endpoints, like Rajiv mentioned, unified endpoint management, etc. From a security standpoint, 80% of your attacks now are through phishing. It's a globally accepted fact. So if your email gateways are protected, uh, your endpoints are hardened and protected, and there are no vulnerabilities, I think you've done the job. Then the mindset that somebody needs to have, and there is an acceptance, proactive security. So every organization is aligning with the cybersecurity teams that please do not bring a vulnerable system on the network. Don't listen to people for their whims and fancies. Do what is right for the organization, and a business loss for one person for one day or 2 days, it is acceptable, because lack of that could lead to a business loss of couple of years.
That's true.
So earlier, that business loss of one person was taken very seriously. I can't bill three people. It become a big issue. I'm not able to deliver this project to the customer. So now even the customers understand, the management also understands. And I've seen this in multiple organizations that that business loss concept of a person is no longer applicable. It is more of an organizational proactive measurement. But yes, organization should look at what is more open to people. If it is a SaaS based application, then you need to really work on continuous checks. Again, don't go by the compliance metrics and etc., but keep looking at new threats, vulnerabilities that come up. So patching, vulnerability management, your emails, your endpoints, your applications, if they are protected and very, very seriously looked into, I think you will stay safe for a longer period of time.
That's fantastic. Rajiv ji, I'm going to ask you the same question. Really, as organizations look ahead into the future and as they sit down to craft their cyber resilience programs, their strategies, what, in your view, from your personal experience in your particular sector, are those imperatives that they must look at? And what are the opportunities that present themselves today that must be capitalized on?
I think Amit covered it very well. But if you really look at security, I try to compare with some sort of disease or some sort of illness we face in our body. And when we are not well or we have fever, we always see that there is something wrong with our hygiene system. So security is something related to hygiene. If your infrastructure, your network, your basic hygiene is not in place, if it is not done properly, and then we go on adapting multiple tools just for the sake of getting it, doesn't serve the purpose. So hygiene first is the important concept. Ensure that all your systems are hygiene, are updated regularly, patched up updated. There are no vulnerabilities within the system, and then try to have some additional things, like in case something goes wrong, how do I try to come out of this? So that can be some backup, whether my backup systems are perfect, whether I have got some backup available, offline backup, or it is available at the DR site, whether the system and everything is working perfectly. I think these are the simple things which one adapts, then he can have a peaceful night.
In fact, that's exactly what I was. Amit, please
I'll,
go
I'll,
ahead.
I'll just
Join the
I'll just
party.
add two more points to just add and put it in a different language what Rajiv just mentioned. Hygiene is similar to, or can be put into two places of execution. One is your measurement of effectiveness.
True.
You can have millions of tools, but if they are not effective, there is no point. See, when you leave your house after locking the door, don't you pull the lock and see if it is locked?
Absolutely.
That is measurement of effectiveness. It's very simple. It's the same thing that you do. Is the tool effective or not? Second is the hygiene part is, the culture. So it is not my problem that my company is secure. It is the entire company's problem that the company is secure. Okay. Like, you cannot blame the watchman in your colony for not having a theft in your house or for having a theft in your house. You don't pull that lock. Lock is the key is attached with that. Somebody comes and goes into your house. What will that poor watchman do outside? So he's created an environment to keep you secure, but you have to help him in keeping yourself secure. So the hygiene comes from two things. In very simple terms, if you keep going eating outside, you're going to fall sick. like
Indeed so.
mentioned,
Yeah,
body
exactly.
mein bimar ho jayenge, so
Just one point. See, if you have a lock, but if you keep the keys with so many people and you don't have record of the keys, that is better not to have lock.
I couldn't agree more. But gentlemen, I do have a view on the clock. A personal question. Does a CISO have the ability to enjoy peaceful sleep? Rajivji,
No.
Amit?
oh, no way, no way. I'll tell you, you get a call from somebody senior, the first thing that comes to mind is what has gone wrong. And then that my leadership, somebody calls me on a Saturday, and then I'm what happened? So bole, nothing happened here. I just called to say hello. I said, please don't do. So you send a WhatsApp message, hi Amit, how are you? I'm happy with that. Please don't call. It bloody scares the shit out of me.
Absolutely.
You get a call from
Absolutely.
your SOC team, you can't have a peaceful sleep.
No, Sisu, I have to be very frank, Arjun. He's always under tremendous pressure. He's always thinking, yeah, I have done all these things, but if something is not done, what is that one minute? And that keeps him always, awake in the night. Yeah, with that point is pending whether I should, whether that will have some sort of risk, and that makes him sleepless. And the circle continues. That's how it goes, basically.
Couldn't agree more. Which is truly reflective of the fact that in a perfect world, an organization system would run without problems 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. But we clearly don't live in a perfect world, and things happen, like you gentlemen have articulated. And when they do, an organization's ability to carry on in the face of adversity will obviously, like you've supremely articulated, depend on the resiliency of its systems. But gentlemen, that's pretty much what we have time for in this segment. Amit, Rajiv, it has been more than interesting in having this conversation with you. We're immensely grateful. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Arjun. Thank you. It
Thank you,
was
Arjun.
a pleasure
Thank you.
joining you, working with you.
Thank you.
Always.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was I, Arjun Vishwanathan, in conversation with Amit Dhawan and Rajiv Shraf on the whole concept of cyber resilience. That's pretty much in this segment. Stay tuned with us, and we'll be back in the next segment in just a moment.
Thank you very much, Rajiv. Thank you, Amit and Arjun, for that very thought provoking and engaging conversation. Your inputs are truly appreciated, and I'm sure that all of us are going to cherish the gems of wisdom shared. With that, let's now move forward to our next segment, which is the Tech Dialogues. Let's welcome Mr. Nitin Bhatia, Cloud and Software Manager, India, Data Protection Solutions for Dell Technologies, in conversation with Mr. Arjun Vishwanathan, Chief Knowledge Officer, Strategy. Once again, over to you, Arjun.
Hello and welcome back. I'm Arjun Vishwanathan, and welcome to the Digital Dialogues 2.0, Episode 4, Segment 2, where we're going to be talking about concepts and emerging paradigms around business resilience and the ability for organizations and industry, by and large, to reimagine security. Because being a cyber resilient organization means being able to fight through adversity and continue to operate, even if it's in a scaled down mode, and yet not lose the sights of the value acceleration that industry is today mandated to follow in such accelerated manner as will be fairly unstoppable. And to discuss all of this with me, please put your hands together, ladies and gentlemen, to welcome an old friend and a very, very eminent subject matter expert from industry, Nitin Bhatia, Cloud and Software Manager, India for Data Protection Solutions, Dell Technologies. Nitin, welcome. Delighted.
Hey, hi Arjun. How are you doing today?
Very, very well. Thank you so very much. Nitin, we've got a very, very, what promises to be a very interesting 25 minutes ahead in this particular segment. Nitin, I must ask you this. See, in a perfect world, an organization systems would run without problems 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, and so on and so forth. But we certainly and clearly don't live in a perfect world. Things happen, adversities crop up, and when they do, an organization's ability to carry on in the face of adversity will depend on the resilience of its own systems. In your view, and before we jump into cybersecurity and data security by itself, Nitin, I must ask you, given your vast experience in this domain, How do you define for industry the whole concept of the embedding of cyber resilience within the very fabric of the enterprise as we move forward from 2022 and beyond?
I think we've been catching up with the external and the internal threats around cyber. I would say cyber incidents, right? There are a lot of different ways people are trying to build resilience around it. And today, every enterprise, and as you rightly said, there is more to do. There is not a perfect world around us. Uh, but how much is always a question. And I think the broad framework of NIST plays a vital role for each enterprise to look at how do they look at the five pillars of NIST and build that framework as close as that they can and implement in their environment. Okay, and if you look at today, as large enterprises move towards work from home, virtualized environment, building up, I would say, the edge to go to cloud strategy, it is important at each level the cyber resilience plays a vital role. It is not only about visibility, it is about the amount of controls that they would implement. And patch manageability, vulnerability assessments is just a part of the framework. It is about how much recovery can you build into your organization at the edge levels. Today, if you look at each, it's been 2 years, we've been connecting over virtual platforms. It is more and more difficult, and there are more doors open today for an organization to be under threat. There were limited access points where when you were into a data center or into office. Today, every connection that's coming from outside is a vulnerable threat. Today, your endpoints are becoming more and more vulnerable. I have not been an IT side, being from an IT industry. At times, I forget to patch because there is too much of work on the table, and that leaves my organization at risk, right? And each one of us have education. Of course, education plays a vital role. But how is each one of us responding to these threats is a crucial part that we should all look at in a cyber resilience strategy. And then coming to maintaining a copy of our data, right? Till all this time, we were trying to build, mixing up cyber security and cyber recovery together to say, if I have secured everything, I've cut down all the access points, I've disabled all the ports, I am good. But today, there are multiple different kinds of attacks which are getting inside your organization. And you are being pushed towards the last good copy of your data to recover from. Now, how many copies do you keep? The question starts there. What devices do you protect? The question starts there. Should you keep an air gap copy of your laptop? If you ask me, that's the first thing that we would need to do. Organizations are transforming towards SaaS-based products. Each of the organization today is on OneDrives, Google Drives. Collaborative tools have come into existence. And now these collaborative tools are as vulnerable as they were, right? Because they are still working on a protocol which is sync and chain. Maintaining a copy of those environments is as critical to an organization.
Nitin, you made a very interesting point, and I'm going to pick on that, particularly in your narrative and your articulation, which you said was each one of us responds in a certain fashion, in a certain manner. Therefore, and before I jump into the overall concepts of cybersecurity and data security by themselves, I must ask you this, given such wide experience and plus the fact that you're interacting day in and day out with customers, addressing challenges, seizing opportunities, I must ask you this. In your view and in your experience, and when you take on this consultative approach with Indian industry, with organizations, enterprises, CISOs, CIOs, how much do you feel and do you guide your clients on the concept of cyber resilience being a very seamless convergence of strategy, culture, and vision? And in your view, where does Dell Technologies kind of fit in this overall plurality of concepts?
So again, and this is a great question. Okay, and I will have to be elaborative to tell you how
Please.
we discuss. Okay, so every customer that I speak to, okay, I always look at building up the solutions on the basis of the three I's. It is important for you to keep an isolated copy of your environment. Okay, so isolation plays a critical role in when customers look at a cyber resilient approach. Then maintaining an immutable copy because you need to maintain a copy in environment which, if compromised tomorrow, should also be secure, right? And that plays an important role. And then how much amount of intelligence can you build and get from the data before even the attack comes in, or to do corrective actions tomorrow, the amount of intelligence that you need to build up. So every time I speak to a customer, I said, if you're looking at a solution that has to be cyber resilient, you should look at the three I's to be a part of that solution. Now, coming to the part two of your question, saying, when we interact with the customers, are they pretty clear on what has to be implemented? Is it people, process, culture? What needs to change? Believe me, change is the only constant. Every time you look at a strategy or an organization, same industry, same verticals, similar sizes, we still can't give a similar solution. So if somebody comes and tells me, okay, one of my friends in the industry implemented this solution and he assumes to be cyber resilient, believe me, there are going to be different challenges for your organization that could come across when you look at your own strategy. So we start with saying, okay, change, look at your processes, look at your crown jewels. That's the most important. Something that's going to be keeping you into business is the most important factor today for you to start. Then look at every dependent application. When I talk about dependent applications, your Active Directory, network logs, DNS environments. Today, as in when we are collaborating, we are going towards an SSO kind of a single sign-on in the industry. Each application dependency is on authentication. Your controls are driven on authentication. And imagine your Active Directory is at risk. That itself make sure that your hacker could get your organization down by just changing something, right? So looking at these smaller points to start with, and that is where comes the concept of the good, better, and the best. You could start with just implementing devices which they're more cyber resilient, and we can talk into details of each one of them. But this strategy helps a customer start taking the baby steps towards a cyber resilient app. And I know a lot of organizations and customers come back to me and say, oh, Nitin, it is one other copy. I have this copy available. It's one other copy. I agree, but it is a resilient copy. It is going to save you when that 0-day impact is going to be happening.
You're actually right, and your articulation was fairly impactful because it is existential at the end of the day, isn't it? Because Nitin, one of the things that have also entered the normal lexicon of business strategy and operations is the whole concept of automation. And increasingly, as we're seeing organizations digitize their businesses, digitize their processes, and automate operations, the risk or the supreme risk of cyber attacks tend to grow significantly in much more measure than ever traditionally imagines. And therefore, organizations today are attempting, and I use the word in a considered manner, attempting to devise new ways of protecting the organization from existential threats and build a secure digital agenda. Now, uh, you at Dell Technologies and Dell Technologies by themselves have been the forefront of helping and assisting and partnering Indian industry in building a digital secure agenda. How do you expand on that from your own perspective of your outside and view into industry?
Uh, I think the more to do with the way Dell looks at each of our customers, the strategy that we've been implementing today with the vision in our culture codes, in our way of articulating it, is working with customers on edge to core to cloud. A
True.
clear where every device that we look at has to have certain amount of cyber resilience. Now, I'll give you examples. We have had organic and inorganic growth in our division itself to make sure that every device that builds from Dell part of it is protected. A copy is maintained into the cloud and it's an air gap copy. So at least the isolation has been taken care of. Each of our designs, when we look at and when we look at products of the last resort, like the data domain series, we have started engineering cyber resilience into the device. Today, just to give you an example, if you look at backup in general, uh, just changing the clock, the time, like authentication was one part which was critical for applications to work. time is a factor for backups to run.
True.
Maintain a copy of saying, okay, I have a copy available with me with the 7-year retention. Just changing an NTP clock could just self-destruct your backups. Okay, a very lame example that I would take. So if an insider wants to do this, he could just change the NTP clock and the whole devices have expired. Today, with technologies and developments that we are doing, we are avoiding device clock tampering. We're putting resilient into the device that without too elevated security credentials, people couldn't run the sysadmin commands on the environment. Because today, becoming one of the perhaps say largest vendors in providing storage of end results, we need to make sure that our storages are resilient enough from the threats that we all are aware. You rightly said today, implementing a strategy of saying, should we do it on a PPBA architecture or should we let live on a storage-based architecture? We are playing in both these environments. We have a storage-based architecture from a higher perspective for transformation, but we have a purpose-built backup appliance, which is more resilient to say that, okay, if you're going to put a data onto this, your data is at least secured for the first stage. Then comes the strategy of building an isolation, immutable, and intelligence onto it. But maintaining that data, keeping that data, making sure that it is readable at any given point of time is the first and the foremost thing that Dell practices internally. And every of our product is building towards saying that the future is towards cyber resilient architecture. True. And that's getting.
It's interesting that you spoke about the whole concept of data because at Dell Technologies, one of your pioneering innovative solutions for industry have been the CRS suite of solutions. My question to you, therefore, Nitin, and having heard you establish as well as articulate the positioning of Dell from an industry point of view, is now we've established the fact of what cyber resilience broadly covers, and we've established equally the fact that data is existential. Equally, however, I must ask you this, Nitin, which is that cyber resilience focuses on what happens when cybersecurity measures tend to fail. And therefore, resilience means putting measures in place to minimize the impact of those disruptions. In that kind of a scenario, what is your, and you can be as exponential and expansive on this, what is your view on how data integrity is approached in your consultative approach with organizations when you start embarking on that very journey?
And I think you've asked me to do a 5-hour consulting workshop.
It's always a delight to hear you.
And it starts with saying, okay, you've identified, you've decided saying, okay, I have a problem. It's like today's situation, right? The symptoms have arisen. You've realized that, okay, I have the symptoms and I need to at least start doing preventive measures. I need to take my vitamins. Now, that is where we start with a lot of organizations saying, okay, now that you've realized that, okay, you've been attacked, not been attacked, there are so many industry, I would say, white papers that have been floating around, studies that have been floating around, that what could go wrong in your organization? Now, and one of the stats that I've been talking to a lot of my customers, during the 2 years of pandemic itself, it is the attack that's come down from what was 39 seconds in 2020 when we started with the pandemic to coming down to 11 seconds. Wow. So that's a pretty good drop, even in seconds. Now look at the impact that these organizations will get to. The moment we look at saying that, okay, I need to build a resilient architecture, the first and the foremost thing comes is maintaining your first copy on a disk-based approach. Then making sure that you're putting it into an isolated vault where your security team comes into the picture of saying that they're going to maintain a lot of automations even on the vaulting environment. Yeah. Because it's not one person's job in that organization. Yeah. It's not just putting that copy available anywhere and building it up. Then putting it onto an immutable architecture where the complete management approach of CRS is different, right? It is not connected to your network. I'm going to do all my study into the vaulted sandboxed environment to make sure that if at all an infected copy comes in, that doesn't impact your production, which is live. Now comes the intelligence, which is our OEM partner CyberSense, which is a product from Index Engine, where I'm allowing customers to run petabytes of information that is deduped on a data domain architecture to be read, and AI/ML could be generated customized to this environment. So you spoke about automation. So automation needs your data to be available all the time.
Indeed.
Looking at a cyber recovery solution, we're building it on a deduped architecture, which means your petabyte of information, your backup copies. Average organization today is 10 to 15 terabytes. And I'm talking about the mid-size. Today, I carry 20 terabytes of data. I don't know what, and probably all, but it's there. Now, maintaining that copy and then maintaining 20, 30 copies for my audit requirements, for my rollbacks, for every of these parts coming in. And with the data privacy laws coming in, with the more and more, I would say, controls being built around from even the auditors. So this is becoming important that the amount of intelligence needs to be given. Now, once this is built, a lot of customers come back and ask me, but today we are moving away from our on-prem environment. I am going to cloud. Is it that cloud is secure? I'm sorry to say, and to all my friends in the industry, anywhere you keep your data, it is not secure. Believe it, if you put it into CRS, am I going to be talking about saying, is it 100% guaranteed recovery? The recovery is guaranteed, but there is going to be some amount of time that will still be factored in the process of building this. Now, when we look at consulting each of our organizations and we speak about any application, any data, any premise or any location, we've approached towards a multi-cloud approach, which means today my systems are available even with hyperscalers as a ready service to be consumed to make sure that customers could start even small. We built t-shirt size environments where we could start with a medium, a small, medium, large, and extra large kind of a situation, where at least when you've identified, you could immediately start implementing. Then comes the part of educating, implementing, putting up a scope, building run books for your organization. It's an ongoing process. And that is where our services teams and consulting teams come into picture who have experienced this. So just to give you a fun fact here, this was one of the solutions which got developed jointly with a customer. This was a customer requirement where they came back to us in 2015, the largest bank in the world, came back to say how about building something very close to what CRS is. So the incubation of this happened at the customer's data center. So processes came from a lot of customers, and it's a joint learning act.
It is indeed. So therefore, I must ask you equally this, Nitin, which is that as the threat landscape evolves in much, much more sophistication than we've perhaps ever seen it ever before in our lives, uh, at Dell Technologies, you must also be observant of the fact and acknowledging of the fact that different organizations in different sectors will probably and perhaps be at different levels of maturity in their orchestration of a reliable security or a resilient paradigm. Uh, and therefore, if you were to kind of generalize it for our wonderful audience today, what would be a prescriptive guidance to organizations, CIOs, IT leaders, CISOs, on how they should approach the entire journey? Because this journey is one that is fascinating, but also one that is immensely complex. How should IT leaders approach the journey?
Uh, I think there is no simple answer.
Indeed,
Uh, so if you ask me to generalize, as I told you, I cannot generalize a solution for even two customers who come to me at the same time.
that
And I
is
could,
natural.
so, yes, a very tough question. But as I said, it's an approach that they need to look at. Looking at the NIST framework, it starts there. Looking at the pillars of the recover and protect, maintaining a gold copy in the environment, identifying the applications, building it on the three I's of isolation, immutability, intelligence, starting at saying, okay, let me at least keep one copy in the good part of cyber resilient architecture, so CR is good, approaching towards the better and the best. We normally tend to say, okay, I want to start with the best, and of course the cost pressures and other things come in. Maintaining a copy is where I have always asked my customers. So every time I have to answer this question, my immediate response is, So maintain a copy on an immutable storage that you can recover from. Okay, you could put in multiple gates, you could generate environments, it could be physical, but keeping a copy in the data center right next to your production, that's not been known to anybody else and is available for you from a recovery standpoint, is the first step towards a cyber resilient uh, copy or a gold copy from an architecture. Of course, then comes in the amount of intelligence that you want to build around it. You want to run it in DC, DR. Uh, DR is not a compensation for cyber resilience. It's always connected. So an isolated copy in the data center. Don't look at different sites. Don't look at real estate. It's too costly right now. Just a small rack in the same environment still works.
No, as in, that's very interesting, but I do have a view on the clock, Nitin, and I do know that you have a hard schedule ahead. A couple of quick questions as you look towards the future, and we are all aware of the fact that Dell Technologies equally is learning as it progresses each day. What are the innovations that we can expect to help Indian industry charter a more resolute, resilient, secure future and march ahead to value acceleration, hyper competitiveness, and supreme innovation? And what is it that we can expect in terms of innovation from Dell Technologies to assist organizations in this journey?
Deltec World is at the corner.
Indeed, it is. We're all quite looking forward to that, isn't it?
So there is a lot of innovation. Believe me, that's the core DNA of their technologies. Every time we are hearing our customers, we are listening to them, we're making sure that we take inputs from them, building these solutions. It could be a journey that we take at a slow pace, but the core of our environment is to make sure that we provide our customer a customer centric any place approach. And when I say it's, and today, if you look at wherever your data resides, the core of building that data and developing intelligence around it, giving you information, and data to information is a journey. And tying it to human progress is the theme that Dell looks at, and that has been the core heart of our innovation.
No, that's fantastic because my last question to you really is one that is, well, in a manner of speaking, theosophical. In many ways, Nitin, one of your jobs is to ensure that CISOs and CIOs sleep more soundly, sleep more peacefully at night. I was speaking to our CIO folks earlier, Rajesh Sharaf and Amit Dhawan, in the previous segment, and they said, well, it's a misnomer that a CISO can ever sleep soundly. Uh, do you feel that over the course of the last maybe 2 years, uh, you individually and of course the overall ecosystem of partners has marched ahead in much more measure to help CISOs sleep more peacefully in the future ahead?
Uh, so, again, and the reason the smile on my face, okay, uh, spending so much time in the industry, this is one of the metrics that's been coming to me lately, saying, okay, I'm not looking at performance availability. I need a sound sleep,
Yeah,
and
I think.
to become the part of a lot of SLA conversations that I have. And yes, today if you look at, it is not about what and how you maintain your data. It is about the process that you build around your organization. How rigid is that process? We've come a long way. Each Indian organization, if you look at from journey of keeping single standalone tapes to building up large data centers, vaulting, movement of tapes, and pandemic has taught us a lot when the touch of data was there, right? If you look at from the industry that I belong, backup industry had tapes been mobilizing a lot. And I think the first lockdown that looked at, people realized that they can't touch tapes because it is becoming one of the devices for transmission of viruses. Now, when that was a journey, today each of the organization says, okay, can I look at saying, I have done this, I have implemented CRS, and I can have a sound sleep? My answer to them is yes. Can you have a sound sleep? Will you be able to recover? Yes. The expectations of saying, can I recover in 2 hours, 3 hours, and the availability part of it, so this is not an availability.
It's a relative term for sure.
Correct. And there are different terminologies which are coming. We're talking about cyber resilient RPOs and RPOs. And I don't want to get, I'm cognizant of time, otherwise I could have taken this discussion.
Indeed.
But today they can. The intelligence gives them, so the best architecture when you're building it up, it gives them a lot of intelligence even before the attack is happened. So even a defragmentation of a normal environment will be captured by the software to tell them there is something wrong which happened. So predictive analysis, the AI/ML, helps that intelligence come pretty early, and it's not a virus can update that it's always going to be. So it is learning at the not at the metadata but a full content environment. And
Fantastic, actually.
I recommend your person from the audience today to look at the Dell Technologies cyber recovery survey that is available on our website. It's a quick 2 questionnaire document to let you know is your organization prepared enough. You could just look at.
That couldn't be more useful enough in the kind of and the times that we live in. But Nitin Bhatia, I must say this as always, uh, delightful speaking with you. Fascinating. Thank you so very much.
Thank you. Pleasure is mine.
Thank you. And ladies and gentlemen, that was I, Arjun Vishwanathan, in conversation with Nitin Bhatia from Dell Technologies on the whole concepts of cyber resilience. That's pretty much from us in this particular segment. Stay tuned and we'll be back in just a moment.
Wow, what an insightful and fantastic conversation. Thank you, Nitin. Thank you, Arjun, for taking us through that. Ladies and gentlemen, with that, it's a wrap. I hope that you found today's episode of the Digital Dialogues insightful and fruitful. I would like to request you to please take a few more moments of your time and fill in the feedback form. Your feedback is absolutely essential to us as it helps us enhance the content, structure, and delivery of our conferences. We'd like to thank you once again on behalf of Dell Technologies, Reddington, and Strategy. Ladies and gentlemen, we look forward to welcoming you at our upcoming webinars and conferences. Until then, stay safe, stay healthy, and have a